Last week, Pastor Charlotte talked about humility, talked about going low, and the results of going low and being humble before God. But that's not where the scripture ends that we just read. It says, humble ourselves and pray. That if my people who are called by name will humble themselves and pray. And so, as I begin to prepare, we realize that you need to pray as a Christian. You need prayer. Amen? And so as I began to prepare this week, I had a dream. And one night I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord. Many scenes from my life flashed across the sky. In each scene, I noticed footprints in the sand. Sometimes there were 2 sets of footprints, and other times there was only one. And this bothered me because it is what we call a cliche. I hate cliches. I'm sorry if I ruined that poem for you. I apologize in advance. Those watching online, you can cast your stones with comments. Prayer, or saying, we all hear the phrase, right? Well, take it to prayer. I'll pray for you, right? And then you forget 30 seconds later, or, I'll take that to prayer. Many times it has become a cliche, right? It's become a colloquialism, something that we say to get ourselves out of a situation, right? Or to not make a decision, right? Pastor Shard or Pastor Brad or someone comes to you, would you really do this? Well, I'll pray about that, Pastor. That's just a nice way of saying, no. Right? But prayer is something so much more powerful, like the Bible study that's going on, and like what God is doing in many hearts and many lives in this community. Something of a desperate need for us, and that's why Chronicles says to humble and pray. And so this morning, how do we not just accept the notion of prayer? I want to propose a question. How do we realize the importance and the connection, not just the results, but the life-changing, atmospheric, moving nature of a connection of God with prayer? For every single person. Amen? How do we get past the point to say, well, that thing that Pastor Charlotte and others talk about, well, that's just for them, not for me. Do you realize how I woke up today? Right? Did you realize what I did or said this past week? Many years ago, as I first became a Christian, I remember just wondering certain things and asking certain things of God. And I remember he spoke to me one day and he said, you know what? I'm just one silent moment away. And I didn't have everything together. Far be it. I still don't. But he is simply one silent moment away. Because many times in my life, I've prayed to simply get. Have you? Many times in my life, praying was part of a list to check off. Et toi? As pastor, being at ministerial meetings, and you go around the circle asking and writing down things, and then you pray. Right? It's a list. But I don't think that's what God intended for us as children, as his kids. I would ask you, is there more? How much do you need prayer? Because I believe there's an answer. And honestly, a couple of years ago, I began to realize that answer. And God always has an interesting way of bringing revelation to a person. And so a couple of years ago, our family headed to the coast to visit my wife's family. And they're down in Vancouver. And in visiting style, like every child does, when you go to visit your parents, you say, take my kids. And you head out, right? We went down to Montana one time when we were in the southern Alberta region, and we went there and realized it was actually Thanksgiving weekend, and we drove around and we're like, oh boy, maybe we should shop, and the dollar was even at that time, so you can tell how long ago that was. And we found a place, and it was called Check a Child. Yeah, that's the name of the daycare. Check a child. So we checked our child. And it was an interesting time. So we checked our children with Tamsin's mom to watch the kids for the night, and I was looking for something to do in the big city. And I came across a restaurant. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called The Dark Table. And to preface this experience, in this restaurant, I'm a cautious eater. Based on my size, you would think, nah. But I really am, right? Do you like the jacket? It's slimming. And this physique just shows you I like dessert. That's all it does. And I like to know what I eat. I like to see the presentation, right? Because you're paying for presentation as much as you are the food nowadays. And I like to have a spice level at a certain level. This place was nothing what I was accustomed to at all. Because as you enter into this experience, you're faced with some facts. You're met outside, number one, outside the building by the staff. You're not allowed to go inside. And when you order, you have to order outside before you enter the building. And 2/3 of the meal is a surprise. You can choose 1/3 so that you know 1/3 of what you're going to eat. We chose all surprise because we're just smart like that. And outside you meet your waitress, who is blind. Completely, legally blind. That's your waitress. And you then, once you've placed your order and you've met your waitress, then they open the door and you enter a building that is pitch black. You literally cannot see this. And you're led by somebody who cannot see. They're blind. They're legally blind. And it's an awesome opportunity for a job for people that can't see. Now, that person you've never met before. She tells you, you know what, the floor is completely flat. So all you have to do is place your hands on her shoulder and she'll bring you to your table. Okay. You're seated in a place where you can't see if it's clean, if it's dirty, if it's new, if it's old, because there is no light whatsoever. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And you're told you're not allowed to have any light. You're told, shut your phone off before you enter the building so that no light comes out. So you still, in this experience, can experience complete, utter darkness while you eat. Once you're seated, you're then touched by a stranger to show you where your utensils are, where your cup of water is, and then after a period of time, you're fed food that you cannot see. You do not know in the least what the taste is going to be. And you're, well, in a sense, because you're paying for it, you're told like your mother, eat what's put in front of you. Right? If you must use the washroom, you have to get the attention, somehow, yelling, of your waitress to lead you to the bathroom because you can't do it alone. And they frown upon trying to do it right there. You have to be then okay with just hearing the person's voice that's seated in front of you. So you better like the date you brought, right? Like this is not a business meeting dinner. So the least I can say, in this experience, I was uncomfortable. And I was paying to be so uncomfortable. And I could tell that my date, my wife, was also uncomfortable. How did I know that? Well, as we sat there in the pitch black, our conversation started. Well, I could say it didn't stop. Because in the dark, you can't look longingly into the eyes of your spouse. You can't see the end of your nose. At one point later on in the date, I did sneak up around the side of the table and then, hey! And I did enjoy that. That was a lot of fun. But at the beginning, the talking started and it continued. and the speed increased of the speech of my guest. And it became one-sided. And finally I said, Tamsin, are you nervous? And she's like, well, yes. Because her uncomfortability was at a very high level. Now this peaked, and I'll finish the story with this. This peaked when the salad came. So they showed you, they tapped the table. This is where the salad is. So you reach down, and I grabbed my fork, which, again, she led my hand. Oh, this is all pre-COVID, right? And because how would you, right? You get sanitizer in your eye, and you can't see to wipe it out, and yeah. So I took my fork and I stabbed, hopefully, onto the plate. And I raised whatever was on the fork to my mouth, and to which I was greeted with the texture and consistency I could only describe as a large, hairy spider. Yeah. I knew when my date experienced the same thing and the same item because a small but high-pitched mini scream emitted from across the table. So I'm uncomfortable. And why? Well, I can't see. Right? Therefore, I'm not in control. And I began to think, can I actually do this? Is it really worth it? You know, it was one of those moments when I'm questioning what's on the inside of myself anymore. And people that we talked with afterwards, like, no, I'm too claustrophobic. I can never go into that building. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. And I'm wondering if I'm going to get through all of this without panicking or hyperventilating or running screaming from the building if I could find an exit. Right? And I'm uncomfortable because I can't see and I'm out of control. And I was paying to be so, which is interesting. Have you been there where you can't see? You feel like you're out of control. You're stripped from control in any given situation. Can you say COVID? Where uncertainty of just not the future, but today is present in your life. Right? Even in a basic sense, dads, when your wife is giving birth, that you're a mess because you have no control. You can't change the outcome at all. You just stand there like a lump going, I'm sorry, right? So what do you do when you want to be in control and you're just simply not? The answer is you've got to find a way to see. And that's what I heard the Lord say in that moment. You've got to find a way to see. Because every experience in our life, God can challenge you and train you in the midst of every single thing. Do you realize that? And as you try to find a way to see, the Bible says in the Old Testament that we grope in the dark, right? It says that we see through the glass dimly. But that's the Old Covenant. As Christians and as New Testament believers, God has given us a way to see. Do you realize that? Jesus promised in Luke chapter 8, verse 10, he says, and he said, to you it has been given, say to me, to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God. But to rest it is given in parables, seeing that they may not see, and hearing they may not understand, talking about those that are not believers. But you can see. You can understand. See, Jesus also said in John chapter 5, he said, most assuredly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he, somebody say it, sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner, for the Father loves the Son. That's a relation to you. Shows him all things that he himself does, and will show him greater works than these, that you may marvel. Do you realize you can see, no matter the circumstance, no matter what you're going through, no matter what's been pressed against you, you can see. How? Well, in John chapter 14, and sorry, but rapid fire a bit, verse 16 to 20, it says, I will pray the Father, and he will give you another helper. someone in like quality and like consistency and like character as Jesus himself, the Holy Spirit, that he may abide with you. Someone say, with me. The Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him, but you know him. That means you get to see him because he dwells with you and he'll be in you. Oh. And then he finishes by saying, I'm not going to leave you orphans, but I will come to you. And a little while longer, the world will see me no more, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live also. At that day, you will know that I am my Father, and you in me, and I in you. You will see through the new covenant with the Holy Spirit. And so how? Well, humble yourself. Right? That's what it takes to get in the door. Is to realize, yeah, I don't have it all together. Jesus, I need you. And then, like 2 Chronicles, pray. If we're looking for a way to see, I'll simply say it this way. Prayer is sight. That's what it is. Now, unlike the waitress at the dark table, she didn't need to, but I needed to see. Now, just because I can see doesn't mean that I do see. Come on, huh? Just because you may have functioning eyes doesn't mean that you see. Right? Just like husbands not seeing the overflowing garbage can. Not seeing the upright position toilet seat. Neither does your wife. And then you hear her scream. Right? Prayer is the gateway to sight with the spiritual and then the natural eyes. Amen? I work with equipment, and we're trying to ship something to the coast, a big, huge excavator. And it was too heavy for the trailer that they sent. So they're saying, well, you have to take off the counterweight, which is this big 20,000-pound chunk of steel on the back of the machine. And it had this lever that allowed it to drop down. But after hour 4, 2 bolts were seized. And I remember at that point, no, actually 3 were. At that point, as thick as I can be, I put my hand on the machine when no one was looking. I said, Jesus, please loose this bolt. And it loosed 10 seconds later. Yeah. And then the others still wouldn't move. And I remember saying, God help, we're losing a lot of money right now and a lot of time. And all of a sudden, into my mind popped an idea to operate the counterweight removal system, even though everything's seized up. And it unpinched everything, and it came down. Now, if I had prayed 4 hours before that, it would have been nicer. But prayer is sight into something you can't see. Amen? Just like those bolts, you couldn't see through thick steel and iron to what was going on in the inside. He does see. Amen? And he does care about your everyday. He does care whether you're bleeding finances out because of the situation that you're in. Why? Because you're his child. Why would he not care? He's your father. Huh? Prayer is sight. It's the gateway to hearing at a new and true and deeper level. It's the gateway to a peace that passes all understanding. There comes a certainty when you're connected in prayer. A certainty and a confidence that you don't get outside of a connection with the Father on an ongoing basis. Can you say amen? Remember the example of Saul, who became Paul? He was a religious man. He was empowered to shut down the church, imprison, and kill Christians. And along the road, he's knocked off his course and he's blinded to show the representation to the truth that he needed to come into his life. That's why I really believe that God blinded him. Because to those that are lost, they just simply can't see. You grope in the dark because you simply can't see. And in Acts chapter 9, verses 17 and 18, we meet someone named Ananias, and it says he went his way and entered the house. This was after he was praying, and for the sake of time, we aren't reading all of it. But he had prayed, and God said, go down to this house, and this guy named Saul is there. And Ananias, see, here's the benefit of prayer. It's a two-way street. Ananias said, Lord, he kills people. I don't really want to go. And God says, no, he's a chosen vessel of mine. You need to get down there. I blinded him. I put him there, and I told him that someone was going to come and save him my way. So go. And Ananias, like a good disciple, said, yes, Lord, I'll go. And he lays his hands on him and he says, Brother Saul, how do you know that when you've heard from God, you could call someone who used to kill your uncle brother? How many know that just one word from God not only changes circumstances, but it can change your heart forever? Change your notions forever. Change what you think of somebody, or you could say a certain race, or a certain gender, or a certain whatever. One word changed everything from going from, that's a bad man. I hate him. I don't want to be around him. I'm not getting near him. I'd never talk to him if we went in the same coffee shop together. To brother. Huh? Who do you have that you have things against? One word from God can change everything on the inside. Said he appeared to you on the road as you came. He sent me that you may receive your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Immediately there fell from his eyes something like scales, and he received his sight, and he arose and was baptized. See, Saul needed the prayer life of a man named Ananias. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been the man that he was or became. To fulfill destiny, we need each other in prayer. We need each other to be connected. And not like a cliche saying, yeah, I'll do that, or yes, I'll pray through this list every morning, or whatever the case may be, but to be hearing from what God says, to be able to walk into action what he has said. See, prayer at a deeper level isn't just you saying things. It's you saying what he's said through his voice and through his word. Amen? He was told, go there, lay hands, and I'm going to do this. So Ananias went there and said what he was told, and the miracle took place. And because we're all born in the dark, we need to be led. Huh? We need prayer, not just to get, but to truly see. So just like our experience at the dark table, here are some questions. What do you do when you can't see where to go? You need prayer. What do you do when you can't see what to do next? You need prayer. A lot of us guys, we just point that hard thing up front forward and we just run at it again, don't we? Come on, right? At the beginning, the guy took off, and I grabbed the impact wrench, and I'm like, come on! Shook myself loose, grabbed the snipe, and of course it slips off, and I go hauling into the tracks underneath. It was great. That's why you wear gloves, otherwise you bleed. Amen? So, what do you do when you're thrust into an unknown or new experience? You need prayer. Because God's office hours are 24/7. Amen? Just think about that for a second. He doesn't take a break. He's not on coffee when you need him the most, right? He's not saying, look, the union says I must. He says, yes, I'm here. What do you do when you wake up tomorrow? You need prayer. Look at your neighbor and say, you need prayer. Now turn the other way and say, that's for show. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's true. See, no matter where you are and what you're doing, you need a connection in prayer. Because you'll be thrust into situations and circumstances that you've never been in before, and you're unsure to get through. When we were down south, we just started pastoring, and someone came and said, oh, yeah, you're the pastor, and you're a spiritual type person. Yeah, sure. Well, there's this person I know, and they have this business, and there's their dead uncles walking around upstairs, and everything's breaking in their business because of this demonic activity. Or no, they said this spiritual activity. I said, well, that's a demon. And they said, okay, so you'll go over there. What? I'll do what? You'll go over there and you'll fix it. I'll do what? Huh? And these people were like, just, well-meaning Catholic folk. And so in comes this young, lovely man. And we walked through the place, and this is where prayer becomes real. Amen? Just like the bolts on the excavator. Just like this person's business that they're losing money every day because things are breaking down on them. And so I did what every pastor does. Okay, well, let's pray. Right? And it wasn't a cliche, because on the inside I was saying, Jesus, help! Because I don't know what to do, and I'm apparently the man with the answers. And so we prayed and said, Lord, show us something. Show us what's going on the inside of this place. And as we walked and prayed around the building, all of a sudden I saw this stick, and it had crystals embedded in the stick. And I said, what is that? Because all of a sudden the Lord said, that's it. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, what's this? And they said, oh, my uncle was in rehab, and he made that stick to help him with his dreams and ward off any evil spirits. I'm like, well, that's your problem. It's the stick. It's a gateway on the inside. Anything that isn't spiritually connected with the Holy Spirit is connecting to the other realm. Amen? And so I said, you need to repent. You need to pray with me today, and you need to burn that thing. They did it, and it left. I did tell them, it's not your uncle. It's just a familiar demon spirit that knows you and mimics that. And they could hear this demon walking around, and then things would break inside their shop. Just break randomly. They'd leave it at 5 p.m., and at 8 a.m., it's broken. No one touched it. Just that simple prayer of being on site and getting his insight changed their business, and then they became profitable. God is interested in this two-way street with you and with me. And it's not just so that you can see, it's so that people can see through what you've already seen. That's why Jesus says, go and be witnesses to me. He doesn't say go out and witness. He says, go out and tell people what you've seen me do, what you've heard me say, to watch a miracle come true for them. Amen? There's so many stories and experiences as you walk through life and you step out into things where God has either calmed your spirit, or he's broken through, or he's done miraculous things, both here in Grand Prairie when we lived and down south and around the world. I remember leading a team to Africa, and we got into Nairobi airport late, and we had a 7-hour layover, but they wouldn't let us stay at the airport, and they cordoned me off and hammered me and fleeced me for money on the stuff that we were bringing over to give to the orphanage in Kisumu. And so there's 5 guys around me threatening me, demanding money, and I'm going, I don't know if I could take this. Get outside, finally get out. We go to a guest house that was down the road, and they're like, let's have something to eat. And I felt fine because we got out. It was great. I'm eating something, and all of a sudden, spiritually, something came over me, and I thought I was going to throw up everywhere. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. And every thought that came into my head was one of, you're going to die. You're not even going to make the airport. I don't know why you came here. You don't belong here. How do you think you could lead people when you're going to die first? And all these thoughts. And I remember sitting at the dinner table, and it's hitting me and going, I don't feel like I want to finish this meal. Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I had to go off, and I went off into the courtyard, and I began to pray in the Spirit. I began to pray in tongues because I didn't know what to pray. I hadn't been in that situation before. Amen? When you're in situations that you don't know of what the outcome is going to be, you're in a place where you've never walked before, you need to connect with the Holy Spirit more than anything. And as I began to pray, it took about 10, 15 minutes, and all of a sudden it broke. and just peace filled me. There was no more fear. And we had some situations during that trip that would have been things you should fear, but there was a peace because he had broken through as I connected with him. You need prayer. I need prayer. In fact, pastors love to say this, as we start to close, I want to look at another account in Scripture. That without prayer on both sides of the fence, and you've probably read this encounter, you wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't be watching online. I wouldn't be here. Without this encounter and with a connection in prayer on both sides of the fence, the Gentile world wouldn't have been born. How much do you need prayer? Legitimate, honest prayer. Because as we look into this, we're going to see, again, the need, but we're also going to see the how. Amen? Don't you like application? So let's turn in our Bibles to Acts chapter 10. And we're going to close up with this account. I don't like to say story because this actually happened. Is that okay? Acts chapter 10, and starting in verse 1, it says, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian Regiment, a devout man, one who feared God with all his household, who gave alms generously to the people and prayed to God always. And about the 9th hour of the day, he saw clearly. Come on, somebody. He saw clearly. Not that I want to jump ahead too much. This is a Gentile. This is a commander of the Roman army who historically says that he was a proselyte, meaning he believed the Jews. He wanted to follow their way, but he was still a Roman soldier leading hundreds of men. And yet he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God coming to him and saying, Cornelius. Called him by name. He saw. Why? Because he continued to pray. He continued to give. He wanted not to be part of the crowd, but he wanted to be connected to the source of the crowd. Huh? And when he observed him, the angel, so Cornelius didn't respond immediately. I'm sure it was more like pick your jaw up off the floor, right? It's like, I'm praying these prayers from the Torah, right, and from the Pentateuch, and you're reading those, and all of a sudden, and he observes him, and he was afraid. Somebody say afraid. And he said, what is it, Lord? Right? Like when the police stop you. Hands up. I'm no threat. What would you like, sir? And he said to him, your prayers and your alms have come up before a memorial before God. Now send men to Joppa and send for Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodging with Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the sea. He will tell you what you must do. Amen. There's a connection in prayer. There's an acceptance in prayer. Because Cornelius could have went, and just took off running, right? And then he's being told what he must do from someone he's told to send for. And when the angel who spoke with him had departed, Cornelius called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier from among those who waited on him continually. So when he had explained all these things to him, then he sent to Joppa. If you're a servant of this guy, maybe you don't believe what he believes, right? Can you imagine? Strip club owner. He's wanting to get to church. He's sending money, text to give, right? And something's beginning to change on the inside, and an angel appears to him, and he tells his 2 bouncers, hey, can you go down to the Victory Church and talk to Pastor Brad? And he's supposed to come over here and tell us everything we need to do. What do you think the bouncers are going to do? Dude, I quit. I'm out. You're nuts. Like, I get you're the commander, right? But just think about it in terms of what people would actually think. So he tells them the full story, and they're like, well, either he's nuts or it's an opportunity, right? And we could be killed if we disobey, so I guess we should do it. 3 p.m. in the day, he's praying, and this is what happens. Notice that. See, a prayerful life is needed in as much the seeing as it is the speaking and the doing. From what we've seen from God changes everything. It allows us to open up into what we can do in God. And so, to continue on in Scripture, it says in verse 9, the next day they went on their journey and drew near the city. Peter went up to the housetop to pray, and about noon he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and he saw. He saw heaven opened, and an object like a great sheet bound at 4 corners descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of 4-footed animals, wild beasts, and creeping things, stuff that a Jew should never touch. And a voice came to him and said, rise, Peter, kill and eat, because I know you're hungry. And Peter says, no, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean. And the voice then speaks, this is what I want you to see. What God has cleansed, you must not call common. See, in a connection with prayer, some of the natural elements that you'll run into have incredible spiritual significance. Will change your heart towards people and places and cultures that maybe you grew up with the prejudice. Huh? It was done 3 times and taken up. Peter's being set up. And what is he being set up for? That the gospel is going to be available to everybody. Without Cornelius' obedience to what he saw, and without Peter's obedience to what he's being shown, you and I would not be here. How many need some prayer? And that brings us to prayer need number 1 of the how. Number 1, prayer need, make time. We're all busy. Amen? We're all busy. And just like they say, you got to keep it simple, sweetheart. Right? You got to. Oh, I've worked in the construction industry too long. No. You must keep it simple, sweetheart. Why? Just make time. He's one quiet moment away. Every time I've needed him, he spoke to me. When I was working in sales years ago, I remember going by a business that I wanted to sell things to. And I remember driving past there, and I went into the business, and they had bought all new stuff, $100,000 worth. And I was angry. So angry. I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. And I got in my vehicle, and I started driving down the road, and I started giving it to God. I said, what's wrong with you? I missed this opportunity. I'm following you. This is how you treat me? And in a gentle voice, he said, I told you 3 months ago to go in there. And all of a sudden, my memory goes, and I remember the time as I was driving past the community, and on the inside, as I'm praying and singing, and as you drive, because what else are you going to do, right? And on the inside, I hear, you should go in there. And I'm like, no, I'm busy. I got to make this next appointment. That was what he said. And that is what I didn't obey to. And I lost because I didn't follow. Amen? In this case, they made time. In this case, because they made time, it changed everything for you and me. For in making time, God opens eyes to see, both the good and the bad. Amen? And so what happens next? Well, verse 17 says, well, Peter wondered. Again, another guy who's meditating on what he just saw. Because it breaks everything. Just think about it for just one more second. What he was told breaks everything he was ever taught as a Jew. Everything. Like everything. Those people are evil. Those are the ones God wipes off the earth. But now, you must not call them common or dirty or low. I'm about to clean them. We need prayer. Amen? Think about what angers you about certain people around you, whether it's just what they believe or what they've been told or what Kool-Aid they drank. Come on, is it hitting home right now? There's a lot of anger out in our world based on what people believe, based on what they've been told, even if you or I may know the truth about something. Don't call that one common that I've cleansed. I've prepped for what I've done in you to change everything about them. So he wondered about what he had seen, the Bible says. And 2 men showed up. They called and asked for Peter, and Peter thought about the vision, and then the Holy Spirit spoke, "Behold, 3 men are seeking you. Arise, go down with them, doubt nothing, for I've sent them." Point 2, prayer point number 2, listen immediately. He got the message because he made time at noon when his tummy was grumbling, right? If he was my size, I made a stop for lunch. But he prayed, he saw, and then he listened immediately or intently. Both Cornelius and Peter thought about what they saw before hearing instruction. And Peter sees it and he goes. He comes down, he hears their story, and he puts them up for a night. See, Peter received where to go, Peter received what to do, and Peter was walked through a brand new experience, all through prayer, all through a connection, to which is prayer need number 3, is to obey without hesitation. What you hear, obey without hesitation. Because it may not just be your miracle, it may be someone else's. Right? What about the girl that kept persistent on Paul Youngie Cho when he was not a believer and in hospital, and she kept coming, and he'd curse her out, tell her to get out of here, I don't want your Bible and your God. And she pressured and pressured. He got born again, one of the largest churches in the world. Millions touched because she persisted. She obeyed without hesitation to keep pressing. Right? A Jew is going to go hang out with Gentiles. Is this a ploy to get me killed? That could be a thought. Right? But Peter simply obeys. In fact, he grabs a couple of his guys and says, let's roll. Right? We've heard the story. I don't know what this is about, so let's go. Verse 24. And the following day they entered Caesarea. Now Cornelius was waiting for them and had called together his relatives and close friends. Everybody showed up. Close friends. He had packed the house. He was not socially distancing. And Peter coming in, Cornelius meets him, falls at his feet to worship him. And Peter says, get up, I'm a guy. I'm just a guy. I may carry a message, but I'm just a guy. Then they said to him, you know how lawful, this is Peter then, you know how wrong it is. I'll paraphrase a lot of this as we close. You know how wrong it is for me as a Jew to show up here, to be on your doorstep, right? You're part of the crew that usually puts us in jail, does certain things to us, right? You do realize you're a liberal, I'm a conservative, right? Like, you know I could get blackballed on Facebook for just hanging out with you, right? My Twitter account is hacked, obviously, right? Like all these types of things in our world today that matters to us. More than that mattered to Peter, because he was breaking ceremonial law. He was breaking, in a sense, the word of God to him and to the Jewish people. And he says, hey, look, Cornelius says, look, 4 days I was fasting and this happened to me. And God said, send for you. And he says to him, your prayers have been heard. Send for this guy and he will tell you what you must do. And I love this. Verse 34 says, then Peter opened his mouth and said, in truth, I perceive that God shows no partiality. The revelation came not when he saw, not when he meditated, but when he did it. A revelation sometimes isn't a revelation until you walk out the revelation. He had to not just believe what he saw, he had to think about what he saw, and he had to walk out what he was told that he saw. And it was at that moment he said, God shows no partiality, but in every nation who fears him and works righteousness is accepted by him. And he then begins to preach. That's point number 4. Speak what you've received. Don't keep it on the inside. God is a God who created the heavens and the earth by his voice. He spoke what was on the inside of God himself. And in the same way, what he has shown you, both as you read the word and as you listen intently to what he's saying to you, speak exactly that. That's what prayer is all about. He wants to get it into you so he can get it through you. That's why prayer isn't a cliche. It's what you and I need. It is sight to us who are blind without him. Amen? See the process? Through prayer, all of this happens. We're here today because Peter prayed. We're here today because Peter obeyed. We're here today because Peter preached what he saw. What does that mean for you and me? For every aspect of life where you're unable to see the other side, you need prayer. Humble yourselves and pray. And in the Old Testament it says, turn from your wicked ways. They needed a Savior. I'm guessing those in the room have the Savior. Humble yourself and pray. And when you pray, you'll see. And when you see, you can obey. For when you do, you step into God's life, not your best life. Right? I hate that phrase. Don't you hate that phrase? He's living his best life. Shut up! Because doesn't the Bible say that you are bought with a price? You are not your own. It's not your life, right? It's his. He's called you. When you said yes to his invitation of Jesus, you got enlisted into an army. Whether you like it or not, that's what the Bible says. And that's why you need prayer. Because you are meant to be commissioned every day. You are meant to show somebody what it means to follow him every day. I remember being in Grand Prairie and working for a guy, and he lived in Edmonton. He was the regional manager. And I had shared a few things about what God has done in my life and things like that. And at one point, he confided to me saying, we bought this other character home in the middle of Edmonton, and right now we've got 2 mortgages, and I can't afford it, even on my, manager type salary. I said, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray and ask God to do that for you. In 1 week, his house sold, and it's like a $700,000 house, like 15 years ago. You know what his response was? You sure must have a connection with that big guy. I said, no, you can have the same, man. Huh? No, you can have the same. Once you know him, you can ask of him because he's asking of you, right? It's a two-way thing. It's a two-way street in prayer, and it's a two-way street in effort. There's some things that you've got to step out. Think of Peter. Come, one word, walk on the water. Peter had to go, right? He had a part to play, and in the same way we all do. That's why we must be connected in prayer for his life. Because ultimately, I'll leave you with a takeaway. Today's takeaway is this. Prayer is sight to your soul and access to his way. That's really what it is. If you take anything, take that. Prayer is sight to your soul and access to his way. Let's not live our best life. Let's live his. And that comes as we literally take time. We listen intently. We obey immediately. And we speak whatever we've been given. Because You are the light that's set on a hill. You are the salt to this earth. You are a breath of fresh air to someone who's not confident at all. Our world is looking for confidence, not arrogance. It's looking for confidence. And you and I hold that because we can hear from the creator of the universe. We have a certainty when it comes to what he's written right here in his word. And it comes as we take the time to listen, take the time to pray. That begins with spiritual sight. And in benefit of being able to see, we have the privilege of where to go with what we see. And God says to us that prayer is a declaration of what he said from what you've heard. So tell your neighbor you need some prayer. Ain't that the truth? And so I'll bring you a challenge this week. Since Pastor Charlotte will probably never have me speak again. Take time to walk the steps. It was the first comment about 2020, right? Yeah, that's what did it. Because that's where prayer meets power. Amen? When we walk the steps, not because it's the right 4-point sermon, but those steps, as we walk them, that connects us to the power. And how powerful prayer really is, I believe Pastor Charlotte's going to dig into that next week. Start to show you even more of the format of what God has already instilled for you and for me. For the greenest of us all, how to start walking on that path. So take time this week. Listen intently. And don't go until he speaks, amen? Then obey immediately and be bold with what he said. Be bold because he wants to touch and reach your life. I'll end with one last tiny story. When I was a brand new Christian, some lady said to me that she was in a car wreck and she heard God's audible voice. I said, what? What a ripoff. God says what you do for one, you'll do for another. So I went to my prayer room, and in this little place I rented, I had a cold storage where there was potatoes and a picture of Jesus and a candle. And I got in that cold room, and I was in there, 3 hours. I just said, God, I'm not moving. I'm going to stare at your picture, and I'm not moving until I hear your audible voice. So I sat there, and I prayed, and I sat there, and I prayed, and I sat there. Right? And I sat there. And all of a sudden, I had an open vision. And I could see Jesus standing in front of me. I could see him from about here up. Right about here to here. And he put his arms out. He took one step towards me. And he wrapped his arms. And as his arms touched this in that open vision, I felt a liquid love that I'd never experienced in my life. Never still to this day. In fact, it almost makes me weep just thinking about that moment. And I realized that God knows what I need. A connection in prayer may start with what you think you need, but it will end with him giving you what you do need. I didn't need to hear his audible voice. I still haven't yet at this point. I've heard his still small voice and seen visions and other things like that. But he wants to let each and every one of us know, I'm here for you. So take the time. Let's close in prayer today. And there's a prayer team that will be in the back room there if you want somebody to pray with you based on restrictions and stuff like that. I guess we can't, but I think my spit went further enough out that you probably got something. No, I'm just kidding. Let's close our eyes and let's pray. Let's commit our hearts. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for what only you can do through what you can say. Thank you. We are challenged today, Lord, to commit our hearts and our lives to make the time, to listen intently, to obey without hesitation, and to declare with boldness to step into your life, not just ours. Help us see and catch a fire for what's possible when prayer is our sight. Help us see the way that we can access, which is yours, as prayer becomes our everything. Cleanse our hearts and our lives from trying to do it ourselves, so that we could just simply release that, humble ourselves, get low enough, and then say, you take control so that I can see your power flow. Father, thank you for what you're doing in this church and in this community. Lord, move with your power and might as we commit our hearts to follow you at whatever level we're at, in Jesus' name. If that's you today, pray this with me. Say, Father, I thank you that, like you said, your way is higher than my way, and today I choose your way. I choose your path to receive your results. In Jesus' name, help me today to walk with you each and every day from now on. In Jesus' name.